Welcome to Photoshop, and today we're going to tackle this image that we have here. Toning is very subjective. There's a couple different ways that someone could go about toning this image. Just because I'm doing this one way doesn't mean it's the actual only way or the right way. I'm just going to show you my approach to toning this image and also kind of what I'm trying to achieve in this photo. Basically, I want to sort of lighten this area and lighten this area, but I want to keep this area dark because I like these light rays coming through this image. So in general, this image looks actually pretty good. The way it was photographed was done right. The photographer held these highlights, which is important. When you're photographing an image, if you were to make this a brighter image so you could see this better and see this better, the problem is you would lose the highlight detail here. And that's kind of the key part of the image. Even in Adobe Camera Raw, if you overexpose something so much, you can never get back detail that doesn't exist. So when you make that initial capture, if you take something and there's no detail in it, you can't recover it. So it just doesn't exist. A lot of times it's better to shoot slightly dark than it is to shoot on the brighter side. I'm going to tackle this image sort of in a unique way. I'm going to actually run it through Adobe Camera Raw twice and blend the images together. And the reason is sometimes when you have sort of highlights like this, coming in with an adjustment layer and just kind of painting brightness or darkness, it's going to be difficult. You're going to see that edge. So we're going to be using sort of a luminance mask here to open this image up. Got this image. Now it's important. What we're going to look at is just this area. When I'm toning this, I'm not looking here, I'm not looking here. I'm only worried about this area right here. So the first thing, I'm going to keep this in Adobe Color, and I've switched this to Auto just to sort of warm this image up a little bit. We're just going to brighten this, and we're going to brighten our highlights. And I'm going to open up the shadows a little bit. One thing you need to know, when you're toning an image in Photoshop, just because it looks good on the screen doesn't mean it's going to look good in print. A lot of times your dark areas are going to get muddier. What you see on most screens nowadays is much nicer than any printer can actually print. We sometimes have to open areas up a little bit more because when they kind of get dumbed down when you print them, they're going to get too muddy and difficult to read. That's kind of why sometimes you'll see me open up shadows a little bit more than maybe I would if this was only going to be viewed on the screen. So just like if it's going to be viewed on the web, you're going to be in the sRGB color gamut, you're going to have less tonal values and it's going to be dumbed down even more. So it's just not for print, it's for, you know, viewing in the web or social media or anything. This looks pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with this. I might be able to open it up a little bit more. I don't want to lose this area right here too quickly. So I think we're going to stay there because we can always come back and get that a little bit more. We're going to open this image. It's going to be in Photoshop, so it looks good. We're going to go right back to Photo Mechanic. I'm just going to hit Command E, and that's going to open this image again. Sorry, my little modifier key for some reason isn't working on Pinpoint. They've updated it, and it's just not working, and I can't get it to work. Now that we have this image, now I'm going to adjust this image in Adobe Camera Raw, but I'm only looking in this area as I do it. So I'm going to open this. I'm going to brighten the image a little bit more. And I'm going to open those shadows probably a little bit more. Now we're losing this area a little bit, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. We're going to come back and hold that area. I want this actual not to be this bright. I want it to be darker. So I want it to be light, darker, light. And we're going to hit Open Image. That looks pretty good. Now the first thing that we have to do is we have this image and we have this image. I need to put this one on top of the other. So I'm going to grab my Move tool, click, hold, and drag. Come up to this image, go back down, hold the Shift key and let go. So I'll Command Z that. I'll do it again. What I'm doing, Move tool, clicking down with my mouse, dragging up, hovering over that image appears, dragging back down into the picture, hold the Shift key and let go. That's placing this image directly on top of this image. Directly on top. Now this one is superseding this one at this point. So what we're going to do is create a mask. Now we're going to create a luminance mask. So I've done some videos on luminance masks, but these work great for this type of an image. Because what we can do is have the values that this was opened up only apply to the shadow areas and not really to the highlights areas. Now they're still going to apply a little bit, but we can control that. So what we're going to do is go up here to Image and drop down to Apply Image. Your settings for this are always going to be merged, RGB, multiply. The only thing you're going to change is the invert. So the invert is going to change whether the mask or the luminance mask is a positive or a negative, and that's going to make it affect either your highlights or your shadow areas. So right now it is affecting my highlight areas. If I click this, you're going to see my shadows get brighter. That's what I want in this case. I don't want it on the highlights. I actually want it to affect the shadow areas. So we're going to hit OK. And I will click Alt Option and click on the mask, and this is showing you what a luminance mask looks like. That is the inverted or the negative, and this is the positive, but we want the negative. To get rid of that, hold the Alt Option, click on the mask, and it will go away. And now this image, these values are being applied to my shadow areas, but not really to my highlight areas. They might affect them a little bit, but we're going to go in there and fix that. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is come in, make sure the mask is selected. I'm going to grab my brush. I think we'll leave it at 100%. And I'm just going to come in here and paint the color black. Black is going to hide this from this area. So any of this adjustment that was affecting this image is going to go away. Because I don't want that in this image. I want this to be sort of dark and have that kind of pop that this image originally had. So we're just painting that out. So now you can see we're affecting here and here, which is originally what I wanted. Now this luminance mask, the way it works is it's only affecting the shadow areas and not the highlights. So we have a really nice blend where you can't tell what's going on. I can come up here just in case this is affecting it a little bit and sort of darken that. I also could have, in Adobe Camera Raw, sort of darkened this a little bit as well, and I probably should have, but I didn't. But that's okay because I'm more concerned with this other area of this image. So already, this is great. We're getting some more color, but we have this kind of drama in the center, and this isn't going to get too muddy. We don't have to make this like bright like daylight. It's a little flat now, so we're going to come in here and give it a little bit more pop. So I'm going to make a curves adjustment layer, and you're going to see it affect this whole image. This is just the way I work. I could make a selection, but I'm only looking here. I'm going to open up my highlights, and I'm going to add some contrast. And that looks pretty good. It is a little cyan, so I can come in here and go into my red channel. That's going to add red or add blue. So I said it was a little cyan. Now when using this, a lot of times it can do too much. You might have to come in and do it a different way. There's the cyan, and I'm adding a little bit of warmth to the image, and I think we're going to be okay, but I'm not positive. So let's see. So remember, I just want this to apply to this area, not anywhere else in the whole image. In this case, it's just easier for me to hit Command I and flip this to black and paint it in to where I want it to be applied. You could do it, paint black out here. It's just whatever is quicker for you. There's no way that this has to be done. It's just kind of up to you and how you work. So now we have this adjustment here. You can see, so it's warmed it up and it's kind of gotten rid of some of that cyan and made that pop. And that looks pretty good. I think I'm going to paint a little bit of black right here, just to kind of, I don't like the color change. So if I need to come in and darken that, I'll do that in a different layer. Okay, just wanted to make sure that wasn't being affected. So that looks pretty good there. I'm happy with that. The next thing we're going to do is come in here and just give this a little bit more pop. So we're going to come in here and just open up our highlights just a little bit. And once again, I'm going to hit Command I, because I'm just going to slightly brush this into this area. So notice I'm using white. I haven't need to adjust my brush because it seems to be about the right size. So this is just slightly opening that area. Now I want to increase the color, so I'm going to make a hue saturation. I'm just going to bump up my color just a little bit. And then since I only want it to apply in those areas, I'm going to use that same mask that I did before. That is holding down Alt Option and dragging up. So to get this mask here, I'm holding down Alt Option, dragging that mask up, and it duplicates that mask. So that way the saturation is just in that specific area. One of the issues that you run into in photography is there's a little bit of too much cyan. When you have like daylight but things are in shade, and just in general, a lot of times in blacks or whites, you're going to get too much cyan in an image. If you want to get rid of some of that cyan, you can come in and make a hue saturation. And this has to do with cyan and blue. So if you go all the way to the right, that's showing you where your cyan is. So you can see this has some cyan in it. I don't mind some, but I don't want as much, so I'm going to reduce that. Then usually there's blue in it as well, as you can see in the same location. I'm just going to reduce some of that, just so we're not getting too much blue cast here. I want to keep this sort of on the warmer side of an image versus this darker side of the image that we have here. Now it looks like that this area, not here, but right in here, could be brightened up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and make another adjustment. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start reading my values. And I've got my layers palette all piled up in here. We're at 34%, 11%. What this is doing is telling me kind of how bright or dark it is. Now I'm only looking at the K value, so this is my RGB, but really when I do this, I'm just looking at my white values. I don't want to make something so bright that I lose all detail. You can see here what this is telling you. The first, it says 38 and then 1. A printer is going to have a very difficult time holding 1, so this is going to show out as a big white blob. So now it's at 2. I'm reading those values in here and it's saying I've lost all detail. So we're just going to come down here and open that. I just want my highlights. I don't want to affect my midtones. I just want to get that opened to where I like it, and I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit Command I, and I'm just going to brush that in. So I'm going to come in. I don't want to do it here. So just this area right in here. You could use your flow and knock your flow down and kind of blend that out. So if I wanted to kind of blend this smoke out so it kind of is softer on the edges, we could definitely do that as well. So this kind of, but definitely has this popping out. So I want to zoom in here on this hand right here. So right here, you notice on this hand, we don't want to blow this out or make it too hot. It's just not going to look good. It's one thing I'm watching for when I'm doing this. When I was doing those highlights, I don't want to get this and blow it out. You won't be able to see this in the image, but if you had to, you could come in here in this little highlight spot, clone that out. So to get rid of this, I'm going to come up here and make a new layer. And I want to make sure the sample says all layers, not current layer, all layers. I mean, it's sampling through. And I'm just going to clone that out. And all I'm trying to do is get rid of that specular highlight on the top of that hand. There's one right here on this arm that looks funky as well. Then we'll just zoom out. And that's going to hold that area so we don't just get this really like glowing hot spot into that image. And that's looking a whole lot better. What I'm going to do is put this stuff in a group. I'm going to hit Command G. I'm going to turn this off and turn this on. Turn this off and turn this on. So you can see we've definitely brightened these areas and we brighten this area. I think I want this area a little bit darker, as I said before. So I'm just going to come in here and kind of flatten out my highlights and darken them just a little bit. Hit Command I, grab my brush, I'll bring it back up. I'm going to make it really big. The bigger, the softer this goes. And that looks pretty good. So we're just darkening that one area that is very specific. So this area is looking better. It's a little mucky and dark in here. I could come in here and open that area up if I wanted, but I actually don't want to get this too bright. I like kind of this dark mood in this area. So I'm just going to let this fall and stay dark. I come here and just brighten that up if I wanted, but I want to keep this area. So that looks pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to come in here and darken that one little rock out there. It's really sort of distracting. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to really flatten this image out first. Then I'm going to darken this. And basically, this is just me not wanting this to be so bright. I just want to tone it down a little bit so it's not competing with this area or this area over here. Even this rock right here could be dumbed down a little bit. So I'm just going to lower my opacity to about 20%. So it's not going to totally get rid of it. That looks pretty good. So we've kind of dumbed that down. I still want the focus to be out here on her. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now I would probably crop this image a little bit different, but we're just going to leave it like this. And I would probably remove this little stick here as well. But hopefully that's helpful. You learned a little bit about luminance channels and some different toning methods and how to bring images out in certain areas and not certain areas really easily and not actually have to paint in your own mask. Any comments or questions, you can leave those below, and don't forget to subscribe.